back to the One Line Away podcast. I'm your co-host, Tyler Weber.
And this is Cassie Weber. And in today's episode, we will be going over faith and infertility. Before we go into this episode, there are a few things I wanted to touch on. Number one is this podcast, where our heart lays with this, is we want to be a safe place and be a corner that anyone is welcome to be in, whether that's someone that believes in something different or doesn't. Our hearts are very passionate that anyone deserves a place in our corner here on the One Line Away podcast. And though that's equally important to us, we also are a couple in a marriage of faith. And it's something very complex and very crucial in our journey as humans and as a marriage and as a couple going through infertility and experiencing so much loss that we have experienced. For the believers that are listening to this episode has been something that we've always known we wanted to do, but we wanted to do it in the most respectful and raw, honest, with the most raw approach. And with that being said, this isn't a fluffy episode. This will hopefully be a very true picture of what it looks like being someone in the walk of faith that has been extremely hurt by the people within this hub, and also some of the most important people that have impacted our journey while we've been in this season of our life.
So throughout our journey, we've had a lot of feelings that we've gone through. There's been so many that if we tried to do all of those in one podcast, it would probably last about 4 or 5 hours. But there's three that we want to highlight throughout this episode, with the first one being confusion.
For me, confusion has not let up at any part in this journey. From the very start of where it all began with our ectopic pregnancy, and then going to today, sitting here, it's not let up. There's so much to be confused about, whether it's been why we've lost certain pregnancies or why we've gone on the path that we've gone on, and why us. For us, we can honestly say that we tried to do all the right things from the very beginning. Our foundation of our relationship and our marriage feels like we've been proud to say, like, we've been a true example of what God intended for us. That feeling of being so confused as to why us, why were we quote unquote chosen, or why do we sit here with so much loss under us. And I just don't think that, though our faith has been our saving grace in many parts of this journey, at the same point, there's just, for me, one of the best ways I can put it is, in my opinion, there is some things so much bigger than what I can physically or mentally try to understand, and that's okay.
We just live in this bubble of, and it's not just us, it's everyone that lives in this bubble of, you're focused on your own life, which is fine. Like, that's part of life, but you're only focused on you and maybe your relationship or your family. And you don't realize, like, the broader picture. If we were to have talked about this faith episode 7 months ago, I would probably be like wanting to say so many bad things. But since we've kind of created what we have with this faith episode it makes a lot more sense to me, which is weird to say. Because like I said, if you were to ask me this in July of last year, I would have just been like, nope, I don't want to do it, because people are going to be like, wow, he's going through something.
Yeah.
And I think it was just because I was in my own life, in my own window, in my own glasses of looking into what I thought needed to be something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I needed to have this kid now for only me and you. When in reality, we're doing this podcast and it's kind of turned into, I know we're going to probably get into it later, but it's turned into our purpose.
Yeah.
And the confusion before that, though, was just, it was all of it. It was every single emotion that you can think of. It was confusion, frustration, anger, hate. Like it was every single thing that you can think of was, why don't we have a freaking kid by now? Why don't we have something that we've wanted for so long, arguably so much more than a lot of people that have kids?
And I feel like we're so deserving of that. And I know some people might like eye roll at that, but like I honestly feel like when you have this burning desire in your heart, you're so deserving of that.
For confusion, that's all I had. It's the amount of times that I just said why while driving in my car, or whatever I was doing,
Mm,
is just the biggest one. Like, yeah, there's frustration. Like, I think frustration and confusion for me were kind of the same thing, a little bit, just because it was frustrating why I was confused.
yeah.
Like, and that is confusing to say. I get it, but
Yeah.
it was very like, why. It was just a simple why, and then as I was driving, it turned into me gripping my steering wheel a little tighter, saying, "Why? Like, what is going on?"
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't. I'm like forever grateful for right now, right? But man, 7 months ago, this head was
Last year was really
this head
hard.
was completely different.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that. So,
It does show the power of getting that spark back in your faith. That spark is so alive even when it feels so small. It's really the only reason why I've gotten out of some of these really terrible things. And I think you could say the same for yourself. Is there has been so many moments in my faith journey, especially I've never been tested more in my life than in these last 4 years of walking away from my faith.
mm-hmm.
And I swear to you, when I was ready to let that go and say, you know what, I'm ready to turn myself away from this, I'm done, that spark was still there. And it brought me back to life. It's like that constant feeling of being resurrected in the God that does live through his promises. They might not be the ones that you want right now, and we're living that right now. But there's these small, small pieces of his light, whether it's through people or it's little moments in your head in the day.
I kind of want to just quickly go into it, as I just said, the confusing and gripping my steering wheel very tight because I was frustrated. Let's go into frustration. And for me, it was, every day, like I said, it was the confusing, and then it turned into frustrating, and then I think I would just turn it off. Right, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
driving and I'd be like, okay, no more sad songs, or change it to another sad song and be like, get frustrated more, and be like, okay, I gotta listen to a podcast or something. And I think one thing that always it did frustrate me a lot was, as happy as I am for people that just announcing their pregnancy or whatever it was, they would put, I'm so blessed, you know, and it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, why can't I be blessed with that? Right? Why can't I have that same feeling of being able to post, and whether it's their first time trying or they're going through kind of what we've gone through, right? It's like, I'm so blessed to have this miracle. And I just remember I would
It
get
hurts.
so angry, and it's right there with it. So confused. Like, did I do something? Like, is there
Mm-hmm.
something wrong with me, or is there something wrong with us?
I was also seeing those things on my side of my social media. There was someone in particular that had posted, the whole message behind the post was, I truly believe that I prayed hard enough. And because I prayed hard enough, I was blessed with this. And though there could be very true intentions with that, when I'm someone sitting here and I've been on my knees begging, crying, screaming for the same thing, it makes me feel like my belief isn't big enough. It's not good enough. And that's so damaging to someone walking in a hard part in their faith journey. It can be very damaging to someone who's already feeling the presence of evil and fighting off those demons every day. Frustration and anger are the same for me. I have spent so much energy being within those emotions. And sometimes you need to allow yourself to be angry and to be frustrated. But there's been times where I have hurt myself even more because I've believed in the lies that I started saying to myself about myself. And when you're already feeling like you're trying to combat every evil that's coming towards you, anger and frustration is a very serious thing to be very careful with. And I will go into we've talked about some of my struggles, my mental health struggles in my mental health episode, but faith is such a big thing within some of the darkest times of my life. And when I was really wanting to turn my shoulder away from God, I couldn't say it out loud, but internally, when I was like, I am so done with this because clearly I'm not enough in this world. Like clearly I'm not enough is what I told myself. When I was alone is when I feared myself the most. I feared what voice was going on in my head. I didn't know if it was mine, if it was evil, or if it was God. I got very confused in who was talking to me, what thoughts were whose. And in the time where I had spent probably, I mean, I really don't know the time period, but it felt like months of really pushing away from my faith. Those are some of the most scary times for me. And getting myself out of that took a lot of vulnerability and honesty with myself and recalibrating my brain. And I feel like the people that showed up when I dangled very, 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 very scary thoughts and scary emotions, it's crazy the ones that showed up without me even really asking for it. And that's the really incredible, miraculous way that God does work, is putting these people in your life when you need them most. I think frustration and patience will also be an overlap for us because time gets really sticky with patience. And I don't think I'm anywhere close to being healed in the sense that time makes sense. I just keep saying, I hope someday it will. And I think what I've recognized in this journey is the people of faith are really good at spitting this comment of, it's all God's timing. And the frustration hits very quickly on that because it, again, for me, I have to sit and going, you're telling me that every single baby that I have lost didn't matter. That's how it makes me feel. It was God's timing that I have so much loss, that my body only knows what it's like to kill creation. Absolutely not. Obviously, you don't have a choice but to be patient, even though you might not be actively practicing patience. We are in this space now that we have to trust all of these things and all of these moments in this path have led up to whatever is supposed to be. And I don't know how you feel with patience. I don't have the best relationship with it, but I think when we were forced to sit in pausing on treatment was when it came very, very fast and going, well, I guess we'll just sit here and see what happens. And I just would rather have I'm so happy that we're using this time of practicing patience by doing this. This is a very, very important thing in our lives right now.
All last year, whenever we would go to church or I'm just talking to people in general, all I heard was patience, right? Whenever like our pastor would say, let God speak to you, it was all I kept hearing was patience. So patience for me turned into just like more, like you said, frustration. Because every single time that I would sit there and just be like, okay, like what do you have to say to me? Like I'm listening, I'm here. All I heard was just like it was just one word, and it was just like a patience, and I was just like, that's it. What does that mean? Why? Like, I was just like, and I heard it so much, but every single time it was for months, and I still kind of hear it, like now.
Yeah.
It's just like patience, and now I get it. I mean, like I understand it, but then I didn't, and it was frustrating. And one thing that I mean, I am going to shout out this brand because I have to, and it's the shirt that I'm actually wearing right now, which is kind of convenient. It's the Faith Over Fear brand because there was so much fear I had, right? So much fear, and I mean, I know that's kind of like another one that we don't really have to go into a lot, but I did have a lot of fear. There was the fear of why, like when, like
How?
how, like it was all those questions, like are we ever going to be able to have kids, or like there was all those questions that I had. And once I got this shirt, I wore it with pride. I was just like, I'm putting this thing on, and it was the background on my phone for a long time. Just faith. Every time I looked at it, it was just like no more fear, just have faith.
Yeah.
And I mean, during this time, like for the confusion and frustration and patience for all of them, there was a moment where I wasn't like it was like me and Cassandra were fighting, but I had that relationship with God. It was like we passed each other in the hallway and we kind of just look at each other and we're like, okay. Like nothing was said. And that was kind of how I felt with him for a long time. I'm not a long time, I would say like a couple months. Specifically during like the summer of last year.
Yeah.
Where I was just so angry every single time. And I just felt like I would think about him all the time. I would think about him and be like, hmm. But then I would walk by and just kind of like look, be like, mm-hmm. Like
Yeah.
every single time. And I don't know why. And I honestly, like even on my prep sheet, I didn't even put it down, but I had that realization that that's kind of the attitude I had towards him. It was just I was angry. It was all these angry, frustrated, confused. What do you mean by patience?
Yeah.
Like it was every single one of those. But now I get it. And I'm able to say that like confidently and not have like this bitterness anymore in my heart or just in general
Yeah.
when talking about God or talking about going to church or anything like that.
I think something so powerful, though it feels so, it's like, it's hard to make this sound good, but I would much rather be a broken person of faith. I don't want to be a person that has broken faith. I want to be a broken person in faith.
It's a good way to put that.
As we've walked this journey, there has been phases or seasons within it that other feelings were more pressing or others were maybe our main focus, where maybe I wanted to dive into being angry more than other times, or be really uplifted and trying to, frolic through the walk. I hope is something that has been both a enemy and ally for me, and it will continue to be that way. And I think that within these feelings and these emotions, at the end of the day, I really believe that our God is a loving God. I don't believe that God is a punishing God. I believe that he is our teacher. And through some of those things that feel like punishments or tests, I am so grateful that we've had enough strength to overcome them. And I think it's a big part of our faith journey together is, at the end of the day, we want our testimony to mean something. It's changed everything in our life. In my soul, the holes in my heart, the black parts of my heart have swallowed me in ways that I never thought I'd get out of. And it's because of him. Because he gave me just enough. I want to make him proud of what we're trying to do. I want to be an example of all of the other women or all of the other men that walks like this. And I know it's weird and it's hard to like look at this as like in modern day times, but I truly, out of all of this pain, I have come to this epiphany that if this is the walk that we've been walking, I want it to matter and mean something. And I have to believe that it's so much bigger, like so much bigger than what I can understand. And I'm okay with that now. I'm okay with that. But I also know that his promises, he does see through. And I have to, in order to continue this walk, I have to believe in the truth and his promise that whatever's coming our way, it will be such a large reward. And I don't want people to take that as like we're doing this and expecting something. I'm not expecting anything, but I hope in my heart that that's what's coming.
With us doing this episode, I want to make sure, and I want to help people who are how we were months ago, right? You're sitting there, you're lost, you're confused, you're
Empty.
everything. You're just frustrated. I want to not just I want to help you and maybe find maybe what your why is. Like if you're trying to figure that out. Now I'm not saying you have to go out there and start a podcast, but because that's a journey that only some people can do, and I'm very 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 grateful that we are able to do this because I think it's something that I wouldn't say that we're like meant to do. I'm not saying like
It feels
20.
like we've been called to do
I
it.
feel like we've been called to do it for sure, and I'm very happy and grateful that we're doing this. But I mean, just trying to find your why, trying to make sense of all of that is the biggest thing. That kind of goes into our next topic that we want to talk about with just the ups and downs of your faith journey, right? As we've listed a lot in all these episodes that we've talked in, and there's a lot of ups and downs that happen, and unfortunately there's a lot more downs, I would say, but there are moments where that that we do remember in a positive light, which is huge.
Yeah. If I go all the way back to our ectopic pregnancy loss, I always go back to this as my moment of it's a pinpointed moment in my faith journey that I can't forget. And it's not that I want to forget it, but there's been like in times when I've really wanted to turn away from him, there's these loud reminders of the proof of his existence, the proof of the power that he has, though he feels so far away sometimes, to protect me when I need him. So when Tyler had been quote unquote kicked out of the hospital because there was visiting hours at the time when I had to go in for emergency surgery. And this was actually before our surgery. The night was such a long night. We were, at the ER first and then ambulanced to the hospital, and then you're in triage. And then it was like this morphed time where we were finally able to fall asleep on the hospital bed together while we were waiting for me to get a room.
For that 30 minutes?
Yeah, it was literally like...
I don't even know if it was 30
I
minutes.
don't even know. It was finally that moment where we shut the lights off and just waited. And we were abruptly woken up, and it was a very quick, all right, Tyler, you got to go. Visiting hours are over. And Cassie, I'm moving you up to your room.
You can come back in 2 hours.
And you can come back in whatever time period. It was like there was...
It was 2 hours.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We're not going to get into that.
That was a really harsh moment right there. And so Tyler immediately was very upset. He didn't want to leave me. And I, of course, immediately, I was like, I had fear. I immediately just my first emotion was fear. And so we said bye, and I cried the entire, as my cart was being rolled up into an elevator, up into my room, I cried the entire time. This poor guy, I feel bad for the guy, just trying to do his job, getting me up from point A to point B. I just could not stop crying.
At that point, they had told us that it was a lot more serious.
Yeah.
I think at that point they knew. Did they think that something ruptured?
They were confused on whether or not it was a ruptured cyst or ectopic.
That's what it was.
But because of how much blood was in my stomach, they couldn't see it, but they knew it was bad. And so another part of that journey was there was so much confusion on what was going on. And I feel like I kept getting there was so much confusion surrounding what they were doing with me. If I was waiting to see if my body was going to do something, or if I was waiting for the next surgery, there was so much confusion. And so anyway,
the only straight shot we got that night was, shout out Dr. Weber, no relation, but he's part of the family now.
Yeah, he is. He was incredible. And I've actually been able to send a thank you to him.
Actually?
Yeah. I have a client who works for him. With him, and I've been able to send our thanks. This was about a year ago.
I wonder if he remembered it.
He probably did. There's no way he didn't. It was bad.
The other Webers.
Yeah. So anyway, I got into the room, and I knew that my body needed to rest, and I felt like there was still so much unanswered, and I just couldn't help but shake that I felt so alone. And I kid you not, I felt like there was a presence of evil in this room. And I was so scared. I had not really felt that intense emotion of fear. And so all I had left to do was pray. And I remember the prayer I prayed. And I prayed for God to cover me in a blanket of protection. Because I was scared, I was alone, and I didn't want to be alone, and I didn't know what else was around me. And I was so scared. And I tell you what, I remember feeling this warmth come over me, and I fell asleep. And I just can't shake that memory.
I say it's a good memory. You don't want to shake that one.
I think it's just such a good example of, even, sometimes you feel like you don't feel him, or you don't see him, or you're not experiencing the presence of God. And I know that was him.
While going through this journey, we have talked to our pastor quite a bit. I can't remember the exact moment when we started talking to him about this. But it was, I wouldn't say pretty quick. I would say like a couple years in, maybe a year and a half in. Would you
Yeah.
think? Probably right around there. That we went to him and just started telling him what we were going through, and kind of the story leading up to that. And ever since then, he's been following our story. He's been checking in on us. He texts us. We've gone over to his house and had dinner, and he's been an amazing light. Just for us to be able to just kind of lean on someone, especially regarding faith. And I mean, he's one of those that we've brought him up before, but he will just listen. And it's been an amazing thing to be able to have where he just listens to us and he understands, the frustration that we've had, in the moments that we've been frustrated with God and confused and everything. And I would say, like, for me personally, I knew him prior to going to our church, that he's, been someone that I've been kind of relying on, or not relying on, but I've been leaning on throughout our faith journey. And even when I've been frustrated, like there's been the text that he sends out where you're just like, okay, like God's working in other ways, right? He's reaching out. He knows that I'm frustrated with him. So our pastor's reaching out to us. And that, like, that just means so much to me.
Yeah. I I think there says a lot about people who you feel like take on so much and are leaned on by so many people. And with this, I would say with our pastor and his wife specifically, they are going to forever be a very important piece in our walk, piece of our puzzle, if you will. And there's only very few people in my life that I feel like when I'm with them, when I'm present, when I see them, feel them, however you want to word that, where you feel like they're an actual vessel of Christ. And they are ones that I feel so safe. I feel seen. I feel accepted in our faith, and it feels so unconditional with them and our church family. And I wish more people, I feel so much gratitude that we've gotten to experience a love like this in the setting of religion, because there's so much pain and suffering when it comes to the things that people have negatively experienced in any sorts of religious umbrellas. And with our pastor and his wife, again, that was the moment where they took two fragile people walking a walk that makes not a ton of sense, and they saved us in ways that I can never repay them for. I look at people like this where they have so many people that are relying on them to pray for them. They carry so much doing what they do, and the sacrifice that they have made in their lives to dedicate the message of God, the purpose of why we're here, and what our purpose as just heavenly brothers and sisters together is so incredible. And I think a really cancerous thing that we have to continue to combat every single day is it is no one's place to act like God. When I look at our pastor as being a servant of God, he has never made me feel like other people in my life has made me feel when it comes to unconditional support And I just wish that people could experience the love of God, the acceptance of God in ways like that, because that moment, those discussions, those genuine prayers holding us, deeply caring for us, it matters. And it's such a saving grace in our lives. And I just wish that if he ever hears this, he's such a busy man. Him and his wife are so busy, but like they will be a part of anything in our journey, celebrating, hurting, whatever it is. They have moved so many mountains in people's lives, and we're one of them. And I'm forever grateful.
Same. There has been little moments of joy that we've had through this. Right when we were about to do the transfer for IVF, there was the joy and the hope. The big word that I want to hold on to is hope. There was many, many moments of hope that we had throughout this
Yeah.
whole process while we were doing like IUI. The hope that we could conceive naturally, which is still always a hope in my opinion. That
Yeah.
we're always hoping that it'll work naturally. The many times, the moments that we've had with the IVF doctor, and the moments that we've had like driving to that or being able to do the fun things for IVF, or I think even I would say the hope of once we first started IVF, went to a clinic and kind of had, I mean, yes, it was scary.
Yeah.
It was terrifying because you're like, what are we getting into? But there was a lot of hope that we had and a lot of joy, I think, in good moments that we had throughout this. But yes, they were shot down and made you want to forget them once it failed.
Yeah. There's definitely been small reminders of him and his work. And those small things are definitely so much bigger now that we can reflect on them. I think we're trying to do better now to see those things as they happen or as they come, or really live in those small pieces of the reminder of him. It's so important for us to sit and take a moment to recognize when those small reminders of God's presence, when they're happening, or when you're hearing that thought that feels like it's coming from him, it's from him. Or that conversation you get to have with someone, really sink into that. The ups in this journey, though they might, in the depths of it, they're really hard to see,
Especially in the moment.
definitely in the moment. I know that when I think back about some of the examples of that, those are what have allowed us to continue to put our each step forward, to wake up, to go to sleep and feel safe that the next morning you get another chance at helping someone else or validating someone else. That's what we're here for right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels good to have purpose. And I think that was one of our biggest things is in this, for especially for me, I felt so worthless, and I felt like I had no direction, and I had no reason to wake up. I had no reason to live. I had no reason to go to work. I had no reason to try again. And when that spark came back, when this podcast, when you brought this to me, when we started praying again, like really praying again, and really wanting to be invigorated by our faith, I feel like that was the moment when these little pieces started coming together, right? Like, this has been our why right now. I don't think it was right 2 years ago,
Mm.
you know? And so all of these little, they're not little, but each of these moments or each of these directions, that every direction that the Lord has put our eyes towards, has created this storyline that, again, at the end of the day, we have to hope and believe that it's going to be, that our testimony is going to be an example of his promise and his hope and his existence.
This episode for me is one that I was really looking forward to. It's being able to just say, like, you can be frustrated. Like, when you put the relationship aspect, with you and God, and you actually understand, like, he wants a relationship. It's not just one-sided. I think that's when you can really have those emotions with him. Like, last July, when I was walking by him, I was angry. It's just like giving him the side eye, like, it happened a lot.
Yeah.
And he knew it. I know he knew it. Because he would still try to say things, and I'd listen, but then I'd be like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, why? And this podcast is just, I don't think we understood. I think we were even, as I said earlier, we were looking just down the hallway of our own lives when we made this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we had a goal of we wanted to help people.
Yeah.
But I don't think we realized how soon it would help people, right?
Yeah.
Just with, like, the comments we get of, like, this is what I needed. My husband and I are going through this.
Yeah.
Like, we were in our own hallway of, like, this is what we need. But now, like, we see those comments every day, like, whatever video we're posting, whether on social media or something, like, we see those comments, like, instantly.
Yep. Definitely.
And it's, I think, like, him, I wish he would have just said earlier, but I understand. I get it, and you mentioned earlier just about the, how you had, like, holes in your hearts and stuff. And I'm still just convinced it's just scars.
Yeah.
Each time that we go through something, we just get another scar. It heals, but it's always going to be there. Just something that you see and you'll know, and you'll look at it and you'll just be like, it's part of me. It's part of us.
Well, and I think that's how I look at my scars from my surgery, is there was times where I felt so reminded by my failure. And though I still find myself really sad, because sadness is such a valid emotion, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be a nasty emotion, but sometimes I look at my scars now and I feel invigorated by the story that my body tells. And I really am excited, as scary as excitement is in infertility, I'm excited to see that through.
I knew we were ready for this episode because at the end last Sunday when we recorded, right as we stopped, what'd we say? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I remember I was like, I know what episode's next week.
Oh.
I remember we were literally sitting in these chairs. We hit pace on the after the video. And I remember I just looked down and was just like, I know what episode's next week. I think it's time.
Feels right.
And the whole week we didn't even question it. We were just like, all right.
Yeah.
Once we were prepping for this, we were in it. So I think this is a fantastic episode. I love it. I'm very excited for people to listen.
Yeah. I hope this episode is a good reflection that faith sometimes feels so hard to understand, but it's also because of faith that we all can lean on and not expect any answers, but be able to open our hearts to receiving goodness that we so deserve to receive. And I do believe that when I've allowed that to stir up in my heart again, I'm seeing these good things happen. And they may not feel large, but I look at them as they're something so big in today, right now. And if anyone listened to this episode that isn't a believer or is maybe really where we've both been, and you just so badly want to turn away from all of this is not, we are not intending to make anyone feel like this is a requirement of your path in infertility, or if you're someone that's just, a supporter on our sidelines. These things are really complex. I can't say it enough. These things are everything to do with this topic of faith is so hard to navigate, and we wanted everyone, no matter where you are with that or not, to hear this part of our journey. It's been a very private part of our journey, and it's finally felt right to reflect on this further and hope that it brings any type of spark or stir in your heart, because that's what we want at the end of the day. That's why these episodes are so meaningful to us, is what we get from them. We want someone else to get from these, no matter what that looks like, even if it's something small from this episode. It matters.
So I'm a little sad
Why?
because we have our TikTok page, and our TikTok page is doing well. I'm sad because I didn't get into this community, this infertility community on TikTok while we were going through it.
Mm-hmm.
And this community is wild.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I am extremely sad because now I've been liking all of our stuff, and now all I see is
The algorithm.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I freaking love it. So, I think that's all we have for this episode. But we just want to thank you guys for supporting us in any way that you have, whether it's watching or liking anything that we have or following us on any of our social medias. We want to thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts.
We so badly want any growth on our platforms to be organic when it comes to the podcast. And we've understood that will take time. And I can tell you right now, I have spent multiple comments, reading comments and crying and being reminded by our why and how much bigger it is. And again, it just sits in the fact that we don't have our happy ending yet. And we want to walk with each and every one of you while we're in this together. We are in your corner. We are in your bubble, and we want it to be safe and valid and a place that feels right. So
thanks again for watching, guys. We will see you next week.
Bye, guys.